Let's talk very briefly about the group stage. There was obviously some very eventful matches in there. Are there any that stand out for you in particular?
I think the one for me was the Perm trip. Massive midweek trek out there. We were greeted by about 10 people in hoods saying welcome to hell. Do you remember that?
I thought it was a joke. I thought they were joking, but they were like Halloween costumes, weren't they?
Yeah. So that was the main thing that I remember. Obviously the fact that we got through, but it was it was the trip that actually I remember most.
The thing I remember about that trip in particular was that we lost in the last minute. We played on this artificial pitch, and every time the ball bounced, sort of dust and sand blew up in your face, didn't it? Because it wasn't like the type of artificial surfaces today. And we'd beaten them at home, so 1-0 defeat was no problem. We were going through. But Mohamed Al Fayed, he actually wasn't keen on us taking part in the UEFA competition. His initial thing was, we don't need this because it's going to affect our chances of staying in the league. We'd only just about survived the year before, and he thought the extra matches would be a major distraction. And he actually was jubilant when Alistair McIntosh phoned and said he asked him what the score was, and Alistair said we lost one, and he went, "Oh good, that means we're out of the competition." That's what I remember about the games in particular.
Always kept up with the games, the chairman.
Into the group stage proper, obviously it went to the last day, and how do you remember that night in Basel? It was obviously horribly cold and it was harder than we would have liked it to have been, but got the result in the end.
Yeah, just before Christmas, I remember going to the Christmas market the night before. We
went for a walk out,
got caught in the snow and everything. But I don't think Basel had been beaten for ages at home. So going into the match, we always knew it was going to be a really difficult one. But we ended up winning 3-2, isn't it? 3-2 we won. And I remember thinking at one stage that this could be the end of the road for us, but we kept going and got through in the end. It was a great win, actually.
Yeah, it was. Zoltan played well that night. I remember scoring one of the goals, and I think it was an important one because having got that far, although when we started off the competition, I don't think we had our sights on anything more than getting into the group stage. We weren't even thinking knockout stages then, but having got that far in the group stage and being so close to being able to qualify for the knockout stages, as Ray said, everyone was quite keen then to make certain we got the job done, but we knew we'd left ourselves a difficult task, having lost in Roma, for example, and having lost in Juventus.
Having faced as many teams as you guys have in your career, where does Shakhtar Donetsk rank in terms of the best footballing sides you've come up against?
Yeah, really right at the top. I mean, the game at the Cottage, I don't think we actually touched the ball for about 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes, and they were just penned us in. We couldn't get out, but they were fantastically gifted. They had the 3 Brazilians that played just behind the forward that caused us so many problems. We really couldn't get near them. And then when we went to play the return leg, that was equally daunting, and it was only a free kick and Hangeland getting in there that saved the day. But I think that's probably one of the best teams I've played against at club level.
They were certainly the best team in the knockout stages that we met, and of course at the time, now Shakhtar Donetsk have carried on that type of football ever since really, but at the time they were pretty much an unknown quantity. People didn't quite know how good they were, and those Brazilian players Ray mentioned, I mean Fernandinho and Willian, Luis Adriano, they went on to become very famous players elsewhere. And I remember actually after the game and having successfully knocked them out, actually telephoning the president of Inter, because we couldn't entertain Brazilian or South American players at the time. It was very difficult to get foreign players from outside of Europe unless they were recognised internationals, and both Fernandinho and William were very young players, hadn't played enough games for Brazil for them to qualify for us. I remember phoning Massimo and saying, we've just played a fantastic team and they've got 2 incredibly talented players, and I think you should, have a look at them, because of course Inter didn't suffer from that. They didn't have that restriction. They could have signed the pair of them had they wanted to.
So if the rules had been different, you would have been targeting those sort of players for Fulham potentially?
Well, maybe. I don't know quite if we'd have had enough money to do that. That's another matter. But we might have put their name on the radar and hope for the best. Yeah.
Obviously, Juventus next. Bad result in Turin for us, but still in it in the second leg. You guys had a unique perspective of that famous match. Just what are your memories of that night?
We weren't in it for very long, that's for sure. When they scored after 2 or 3 minutes to give us the task of winning 4-1, as far as I was concerned, that was probably going to be the curtains for us.
Yeah, I must admit, I felt the same. It's actually one of my favourite games ever for any club that I've been attached to. I just think as a night, it was the most memorable night ever. Because really after 10 minutes, you just felt that was going to be it, you know. But the fact that we rallied, I think the crowd really got behind us that night, and you know, made sure that we thought there was some hope left in the tie. And of course, a classic goal to win the match from Donetsk, which was absolutely brilliant. And it does remain, and will always remain, one of my favourite games.
It's a remarkably exciting occasion. In fact, I think Harry Redknapp was at Tottenham at the time, and then we bumped into probably the game, I suppose, or at maybe when we played then. He actually said it was one of the most exciting nights of football he'd ever been a part of, and that was saying something, because at the time, you know, he was already very long into his career and had some plenty of exciting matches along the way. But it was a very special occasion, and I think you're fortunate sometimes to, in a run that leads up to the final, having that sort of game, which will always be an iconic game as far as Fulham fans are concerned. And you know, the two things that Fulham fans are always going to be able to say, I think, in the future, hopefully the team will have further successes like that. But people who were there will always point out that I was at the Juventus game and remember the goals, and I was at the final in Madrid, where unfortunately we fell short by 4 minutes of reaching the penalty shootout stage.
And considering your links to Inter Milan, was it a little bit sweeter knocking Juventus out?
Yeah, I suppose so, but I must say that I played along with that like everybody else. But I mean, I think to really experience or to honestly say that you can feel the same sort of hatred or distaste for another team that the person maybe who's been following Inter Virtue from the fact that his mother and father bought him an Inter shirt and on his christening, you know, on the day of his christening, it's not so easy when you come into a club from abroad. But of course I used to play along with that and say, yeah, that I hate Juventus too, but basically I didn't. I always had a lot of respect for them because you know, they are such a big club, there's no doubt about that. You know, they are right up there with the top, certainly the top 10 clubs in the world. You'd have to put Juventus in that without a shadow of a doubt.
Wolfsburg were next. They had a tremendous side at the time, and their strike force in particular were very prolific, and you must have been delighted with how we kept those two quiet especially.
I think that was a large part of our success, the fact that defensively we were so strong, and not just the back four, it was from the front. We worked really hard, the front two. When the opposition had the ball in midfield, they did likewise. And of course we had an excellent back four anyway, with an outstanding goalkeeper. So I think that was always the strength of the side, the fact that teams found it very hard to score against us.
Wolfsburg were the German champions, weren't they? And I've got to say, I thought they were the weakest team that we played. I think even in the group, I mean, not CSKA Sofia, but I thought Roma, Basel, Shakhtar, Juventus were far superior to Wolfsburg. So strangely, I remember winning the game there, but I think we only won it by 1-0. But I remember skating chance after chance, really. You know, we should have had the game wrapped up 3 or 4-0 by half time. And the Hamburg team also, I don't have any strong memories about them at all, because they obviously couldn't have been that strong either.
You mentioned Hamburg, obviously before the first leg of the semis, there's this volcanic ash cloud and this term Fulhamish that fans use, and it seems like the sort of thing that could only happen to Fulham. We've got to drive to Hamburg for Europa League semi-final.
That was tough. That was tough. I think one of the toughest things. I mean, the journey was tough, full stop. But then when we got stuck on that motorway,
yeah, there'd been a
bad
accident, which basically we was locked in. And remember, the players actually got out on the motorway and had a game of head tennis.
Yeah,
actually got out on the motorway. We were stuck we were at a standstill for a couple of hours, wasn't
It
it?
was very hot.
Good couple of hours.
It was very
Yeah.
hot. It was sunny and hot,
Yeah,
and
it's just
you know, a motorway, and in particular a German autobahn. They're never the best places to be on, even when you're travelling. But to be absolutely stuck and have no idea when we were going to get there.
No.
You know, we had it all planned. We get to the Hamburg and the hotel reasonably early in the day. We'd have a nice relax in the afternoon. We ended up getting there just in time for dinner.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. But that was my one memory from that day was the boys playing their tennis outside the coach, and everyone, a little crowd forming to watch them doing it, and it could only happen to Fulham.
Second leg, we go 1-0 down to a fabulous Petric free kick. What's going through your minds at that point?
Anger, really, because I had Petric at Grasshoppers and he wasn't very good, and you know, I thought this is really sod's law, that a player that you've really dismissed as not being good enough to play for Grasshoppers is now playing for Hamburg and scoring one of the goals. I thought, what happened to him in the meantime? So I thought that's typical, but luckily even the memory of him scoring is more than dimmed through the years, and probably had I not done a little bit of research and you'd have asked me, well, who scored the Hamburg goal, I'd have forgotten it by now.
But the fact we needed, obviously with the away goal, we needed 2 to progress, just says everything about the character of that side you had that year.
Yeah, I think as well, when you looked at us, you know, having just said that, you know, that we built the team on really good foundations in terms that we didn't give too much away, I always felt that we were going to score. I never went into games thinking that we wouldn't score. So it was a bit of a setback, but I always thought we'd get to the final. And I never doubted it for one moment.
It was a nice balance in the team because, to be fair, the recruitment before we came had been a lot better than people gave Sanchez credit for. I mean, sort of Baird and Hughes were good players. Davies was a good player. Murphy was a good player, and you know, and Konchesky. You know, these were guys really who we found there, and were more than happy to find and work with. But the additions of people like Mark Sportson, Breda Hangeland, Damien Duff, Etuhu made a big part in the midfield, and in particular Bobby and AJ. You know, these, you know, often we look at our time here and we dream of those days of being able to really form a team because all the players that we brought in were very carefully chosen to be the right profile and to do the job we wanted them to do. So when Jimmy Bullard left us, we had Danny Murphy, we wanted an Etuhu type in that midfield, and we're lucky enough to identify him and bring him to the club, because identifying players is tough enough. Getting the owners of the club to then put their hand in their pocket and bring the players to the club is even harder still.
You mentioned AJ, so you had your strike force of Bobby and AJ, and then he gets that injury, but it's funny how things work out, because then you pair Zolly, and he was tremendous that season.
He played virtual the games, didn't he? He played virtual the 19 games, but I mean, AJ had been so good in terms of his play in the league the year before to give us a chance to be in that position. So it was really unfortunate for him, but it did turn out to be a good player. Zoltan Guerra was very good at playing that very difficult role, that role where you're not an out-and-out centre forward, and you're certainly not an out-and-out midfield player. You've got to be capable of having the skills to do both jobs, i.e. when you do get forward, to be able to get into the penalty box and convert a chance, but then to be able to get the work rate to come back and help those midfield players out. So he gave us 2 forwards, but he gave us 5 midfielders.
Ray, you've witnessed more games at Craven Cottage than most people. The atmosphere that night when we beat Hamburg, where does that rank?
Right up there, absolutely right up there. I wouldn't say it was as good as the Juventus one. For me, that is the all-time best atmosphere I've ever encountered at Fulham. But it was close. Don't get me wrong. It was close to you know, get into a major European final. It just seemed impossible, you know. But we were there, and no, it was obviously a great occasion.
And the final itself, it obviously didn't end how we would have liked, but you gave Fulham fans an experience they thought they'd never have, so it just must take so much pride in that.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think that, you know, when I meet Fulham fans now, quite often they refer to that, and express their gratitude for having had the opportunity to be there. But it was a cruel blow because we played against a very strong team. As people probably didn't realise at the time how strong it was, because the players, Aguero happens to be quite well known by now, and although Fulham for the time was better known to the public, David De Gea, they had so many good players. But I thought we actually contained them and played well. And the goal that won it for them was it wasn't fluky, but it was really unfortunate that the ball sort of cannoned off the back calf of Breda Hageland, to give them that 2-1. And I honestly believe if we'd have played the extra 4 minutes and got to the extra, the end of extra time and penalties, we quite fancied ourselves really but that's of course we didn't know David De Gea. We knew we had a good goalkeeper. We didn't quite realise they had a good one too.
Yeah.
But we'd have fancied our chances on penalties.
Yeah.
How much of a difference do you think it would have made if Bobby Zamora was 100% fit for that game?
You never know. You can never say what that would be. It was we had an unfortunate situation because Clint, who hadn't played a major part in the games, leading to the sort of quarters and semi-finals, of course comes on against Juventus and scores that wonder goal, and as a result gets himself a sort of a place, if you like, in the team hierarchy, and that when Bob wasn't playing he could get in the team. But of course when Bob came back and I left him out to play Bob again, it wasn't the best of situations. Clint wasn't very happy about it.
And do you think Bobby would have been a potential candidate to go to the World Cup if he'd been fit that summer? Because England didn't really have another striker like him at the time.
He certainly had the technical ability, the awareness, very good game understanding. So I would say that if Capello had needed someone of that type, Bob would have been a candidate. But I really don't know.
And Ray, you've got such a long association with Fulham, and you were with us in the dark days, in the early 90s. It was mad for all of us seeing Fulham get to the final of the Europa League, but for you and the fans who lived through those dark days, was it especially magnificent?
Oh, incredible. I mean, when you think the club nearly folded, not just on one occasion, 2 occasions, nearly went under. The ground was nearly sold for development. Joining up with QPR to form Fulham Park Rangers, went through all that, and then to come out of that, crowds of 4,500 down in Division 1, what is now Division 1. So yeah, I see the very best. The one good thing I always thought was, particularly for them supporters who stuck with the club then, because it was very hard to, because they were absolutely skint. We weren't very good on the pitch, and you really needed to be a real supporter to go and watch what was being served up every week. So for them, I thought it was a magnificent achievement for them to stick through all that and be rewarded with a European final.
Of course. And the players were inconsolable after the game. What do you say to them after that? Because they've done so well, but probably doesn't make it any easier losing the final.
No, there's when people are genuinely as upset by a result as of course everyone was that night, you can only really be in there with them and share, if you like, the disappointment and the misery, because there's no words that can make you feel any better. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember exactly what was said, but I'm pretty sure that myself, Ray and Mike Kelly would have been going around telling them how well they'd done, and that they shouldn't take it to heart, and they should be more proud of reaching the final and putting up such a good show, rather than blaming themselves or berating themselves for not having actually come home with the trophy. But I don't really remember. I don't know if you remember, Ray, what was said.
No, I don't. Not afterwards. There's not too much you can say, really. The only thing I remember about the final actually is before the game, we're seeing Mark Maunders crying his eyes out in the tunnel because we were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
For people like Mark, that's fantastic.
I remember the Atletico Madrid fans as the bus came in as well. It was like being back in Italy. The aggression and the sort of hatred in the fans' faces and the gestures. I thought I was back with Inter travelling to Napoli.
And you've obviously achieved so much in your career. Is that one of the top achievements, would you say?
Of course, yeah. Oh, the time at Fulham was a wonderful time, I must say. You know, I'd been in Finland for the 2 years there in a qualification campaign. I wasn't certain what my next move was going to be, and then Fulham out of the blue, really, and right at the 11th hour came in and said, well, look, you know, what about coming to us? And I sort of took the job, really not knowing exactly what I was going in for. Luckily, Ray was there. I had Kelly, managed to get Kelly to come there as well, and was able therefore to work with a very, very good staff. And it was just a really enjoyable 2.5 years of my life. You know, there were so many good moments, and every day at the training ground, working with that group of players, with Ray and Mike, and preparing what we were going to do with them, and then seeing these guys out there doing their level best to become a better team and become a stronger team. It was, every moment really was a good one. You're always going to pick out the Juventus game or the final as the highlight, but there were so many other highlights of my time during those 2.5 years, which are much more mundane, but at the same time still memories which I will always treasure. And of course Fulham, as a result, although I didn't spend as long working for the club as Ray did, it still has a very special place for me because of the success we had, but also because of the people, you know, the people that I work with.